and I have no idea. Some are real and some aren't.
我不知道哪些是真的，哪些不是真的。
Yeah, so we're really anxious to hear from you to tell us what happened in Israel and its far neighbor.
我们很期待听你跟我们讲，到底在以色列发生的事情，什么事情，还有以色列附近的国家发生了什么事情。
Thank you, Mina. Thank you, Isaiah 19 Ministries. You are such a great partner and such a great friend to Israel, to the Jewish Agency. Thank you for your prayers and your support after all these years. You are a key friend, and we love to see you anytime we can, which is not often enough.
谢谢 Mina， 谢谢以赛亚19事工，也谢谢你们长期对我们祷告支持我们，每次能够见到你们，我们都非常的高兴。
Well, I want to give praise to everybody on the line for all your giving, all the people that have been given to Isaiah 19. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
也谢谢各位在网上的朋友以及大家对以赛亚19事工的奉献。
Yeah, we hope to give you more this year.
我们希望今年能够给你们付出更多。
Yes. So tell us what happened.
所以告诉我们到底发生了什么事。
So I'm not sure what is being reported outside of Israel.
我不晓得在以色列之外报道了些什么。
But as you know, about 1 week ago today was Jerusalem Day. And Jerusalem Day is a day when in all of Israel we celebrate the reunification of Jerusalem in 1967 during the Six-Day War.
那在耶路撒冷，我们正在庆祝1967年6日战争之后，我们结合在一起。
And at 6 p.m. that night, rockets started being fired from Gaza by Hamas from Gaza into Israel.
但是那天晚上6点钟，在加沙，哈马斯就向以色列发射了火箭。
So there was an intense build-up to that moment over the previous probably month.
但是在1个月之前呢，越来越激烈的这个张力呢正在形成。
This was the month of Ramadan.
那这是斋戒月的斋戒月。
When violence between Arabs and Jews happens every year, it's expected.
那每一年阿拉伯人跟犹太人之间就会爆发冲突。
But this year, it was fueled and increased in an exponential way.
但是今年它的爆发更强烈。
And it all really it began with some TikTok videos being uploaded of Arabs slapping Jews, Orthodox Jews walking down the street.
首先就是有一个这个抖音的一个录影带传出来，就是在街上。阿拉伯人开始甩脸这个以色列人。
And those get uploaded and shared all over social media.
那个被上到抖音，然后就用这个传媒传出去了。
And then it was Ramadan, and the police were doing all they could to make sure there wouldn't be riots and violence around the Damascus.
那因为是斋戒月，他们就是希望在各个地方没有这种以色列人跟犹太人跟阿拉伯人之间的冲突。警察也很努力。
This infuriated the Muslims who couldn't congregate and sit around the Damascus gate like they did every year.
那这个激怒了回教徒，因为他们没有办法在斋戒月坐在他们这个回教室的门口这边来聚集。
And so after 2 weeks, the police decided to take down those barricades in order to not have further violence.
所以2个礼拜之后呢，警察决定把这个防御的工事拿开，不要再激发任何的暴力。
And then we had these evictions in a city, in a neighborhood in East Jerusalem. There were 4 families, which make up about 70 people living.
然后在东耶路撒冷有4个家庭，大概70个人。
Living in homes where they weren't paying their rent.
他们住在一个屋子里，但是没有付房租。
Some of them for 10 years, some of them for 20 years, not paying rent and not paying taxes.
有些人住了10年、20年，不付房租，也不付税。
So this court case moved through the Israeli court system for more than 10 years.
那这个案子呢，就从这个那边的法庭移到了以色列的法庭。
And it was nearing the end, and Israel decided to put off the decision until after Ramadan, so there wouldn't be further unrest.
那这个案件已经争讼了10年了，以色列决定在斋戒月之后再得出他的结论。
But around the world and in the Arab media, this made it sound like Israel is evicting these poor families from their property that they've legally lived in for 50 years.
但是在全球的这个媒体的报道，就是说好像以色列很残忍，要把这些住在那边50年的人给赶出去。
But in fact, the claim to the property came far before 50 years ago, and I won't go into that.
他们要这个产权是在50年之前，但是我今天不细讲。
And then on the Friday before, then 1 week ago on Friday, the police were monitoring the situation outside the Western Wall.
那1个礼拜前的1个礼拜五，警察在这个西墙外面，在这边监管。
And rocks began to be thrown from the Temple Mount onto police officers.
然后从圣殿山有石头就丢向这些警察们。
And they were also fearing for rocks being thrown down onto worshipers, people praying at the Kotel, at the Western Wall.
他们也担心这些石头会砸到在这个西墙那边住在旅馆的一些游客。
So the police made a decision to move into the Temple Mount and into Alaska Mosque, where they met angry Muslim worshippers.
所以警察决定上到这个圣殿山，也进入到那个回教室。那这么一做呢，就激怒了在回教室里面敬拜的人。
And they had rocks and stones and Molotov cocktails and things stored inside Alaska Mosque, just waiting for the police to come in.
那他们在这个回教室里面储藏了很多石头，甚至是酒瓶，等着警察来。
So all of this is recorded. All of this is shared all over Instagram and TikTok and everywhere. And the Arab world is incited and enraged that the Israelis would
那这些
do this.
都被录像下来，传播到全世界，所以全世界的这个回教徒开始非常非常的暴怒。
And so the Palestinians decided to delay their first elections in 16 years. The Palestinian Authority delayed their elections.
所以巴勒斯坦当局决定延迟他们16年以来第一次可以有的选举。
They blamed it on the unrest going on in Jerusalem.
他们把所有这些不安责怪耶路撒冷。
In reality, the ruling party, Fatah, was going to lose the elections to Hamas.
事实上呢，就是说当局这个选举可能会输给哈马斯。
And that's the real reason why they called off the elections.
这是为什么他们取消选举投票的这个原因。
But for this reason, Hamas decided to exert their authority over the Palestinian Authority.
那因为这个事情呢，所以哈马斯当局决定要击退这个当政的巴勒斯坦政府。
Because the Palestinian Authority doesn't have rockets. All they can do is call for Muslims and Arabs to cause violence and car rammings and these kind of things.
那巴勒斯坦执政的当局并没有火箭炮，他们只能呼召回教徒或者世界上的阿拉伯人起来斗争来反抗。
But Hamas is funded and weaponized by Iran, and they decided to exert their military force in great power and send thousands and thousands of rockets to Israel.
那受到伊朗资助武器的哈马斯决定动用他们的武力，把很多很多的这个火箭炮就开始向以色列发射。
And the sad thing is this came at such a pivotal point. The Arab world was moving towards peace with Israel in the first time in history.
那最可悲的是，这一段时期，所有阿拉伯世界正朝向要跟以色列和平解决问题的时候，这件事情却发生了。
Ever since President Trump forged the Abraham Accords with these 4 Sunni Arab nations, there was a movement towards peace and stability in this region that we've never seen before.
自从川普总统帮助跟以色列签约的4个苏尼派回教徒的国家跟以色列结盟之后呢，这些阿拉伯世界正向以色列靠拢，这是以前从来没有看见过的。
And the Palestinians were being forced by the Arab nations, these Sunni Arab nations, to back down and to find a way of peace with Israel.
那巴勒斯坦人也在这4个跟以色列结盟的国家的这个压力下呢，要他们也跟以色列和平相处。
And so now that situation is now the peace situation is badly battered, and the pressure is off the Palestinians to make peace with Israel now.
那现在这个压力受到已经被击碎了，所以现在巴勒斯坦没有觉得说需要跟以色列人和平相处。
And who really knows when that peace can be returned? Because now the flames of rage are being incited throughout.
教我怎么弄 background。
什么background？
现在没有人知道和平可不可以解决问题好，因为现在状况非常的不明显。
Let me just show you here. Let me share my screen. And can someone help me? Let me share the screen.
Justin, let me see if I can find you somewhere. Justin, let me look for your name. You're not on page 1, right? No, wait a second. Maybe somebody can sing. Wait a second. Look for Justin. Where is Justin?
You just click the share screen bar button, then you can share screens.
Can you see it? Justin.
It says host has disabled screen sharing.
We need to make you a co-host, then you can share.
Yeah, I'm looking for your name, but I haven't found your name yet.
All right, you keep looking.
它在很上面啊。
Right click just
好像可以。
and then
在哪里？
right
他
click
就
just
在
name.
接人的下面呐，在
接
接人跟 Rose 的下面呐，Michael 接人，然后就是 Justin 啊，
You
他在
can
很上
search
面。
Okay. I see it now.
JB.
All right. Okay, I got it. Thank you, Jesus.
OK，
Okay. Here.
Well, with all these people, thank you
coming.
for attending. All right. So what is this? Oh, I see.
Just a second. Okay, so this the Israeli military operation is called Operation Guardian of the Wall that they've begun in
以色
Gaza.
列的这一次的行动叫做 Guardian， 就是守卫城墙者。
So now this is out of date a little bit. There's been more than 4,000 rockets fired at Israel.
到目前为止，大概有超过4000个火箭炮射向以色列，
just in this 1 week.
就是在这一个礼拜之内。
So never before has Israel experienced the rate and the quantity of rockets being shot at this quick of interval.
以色列从来没有经验过有这么多的火箭炮射向他们。
And many of these rockets landed in areas very near Gaza where Israelis live.
那这些火箭炮很多是落在了以色列人居住的加萨地区。
Okay, so this gray area here is Gaza, a very
这
small.
里灰色地带是加萨。
I think it's it's 25 miles long and
25公里长，
5 to 7 miles wide.
5到7公里宽。
And so most of the rockets they shoot from Gaza are supplied by Iran and are called Qassam rockets.
多数从加萨发射的火箭都是伊朗提供的。
Katyusha rockets. And these have a very short range, like around 17 kilometers.
他们的射程不是很长，只有17公里。
And so these cities like Ashkelon to the north of Gaza,
那这些城市好像加沙北边的雅什基伦，
and above that, Ashdod on the coast, 38
它在
kilometers.
北边靠近海边的雅什图，
These cities especially have been received a brunt of these 4,000 rockets.
那这两个城市，这几个城市呢，实际上得到最多的火箭炮的攻击。
Now, the Jewish Agency for Israel is the ones who helps Jews make Aliyah to Israel, to return to Israel.
那我们的机构是帮助以色列人回到以色列。
And this is who Devorah and I work with, and this is people you are helping to bring back through Isaiah 19 Ministries.
这就是你支持我们所做的事情。我们借着以赛亚19的事工，把人带回到以色列去。
So the Jewish Agency has absorption centers, homes for new immigrants in
那所以我
Ashdod,
们的施工在雅什图呢，有一些房子是供这些回去的人居住，
in Ashkelon,
在雅什基伦，
in Sderot,
还有 Sderot，
and down at the very bottom of the map in Beersheba, there are 4 absorption centers.
然后在地图下面的这个拔示巴，我们有4个这个接待的中心。
This is home to almost 4,000 new immigrants to Israel.
那这些房子呢，是提供了大概4000个新来到以色列移民的人居住。
In addition, they have these senior housing projects with another 7,000 elderly and old people living in these housing situations.
另外，他们还有房舍，提供大概7000以上的老年人居住。
So those people are under our direct responsibility.
那些人是直接接受我们有责任去照管他们。
And if you live in Ashkelon, you have 15 seconds to get to a shelter when the siren goes off.
假如你住在雅斯基伦，你有15 seconds or 15 minutes，
Seconds, 15
Oh.
seconds.
你只有15秒钟可以躲到这个躲避火箭的这个防空洞。
In Beersheba, you have about 45 seconds.
那在拔示巴，你有45秒钟可以逃到这个防空洞去。
In Tel Aviv, you have 90 seconds.
在塔拉维夫大概有90秒钟。
And in Jerusalem, we have 105 seconds to get to a shelter.
那在耶路撒冷有105秒钟可以逃到防空洞去。
So for the first time since 2014, rockets fell in Jerusalem a week
所
ago.
以自从2014年一直到现在，这是第一次火箭射到了耶路撒冷。
And many rockets fell in Tel Aviv.
许多的火箭炮就落到了台拉维夫。
And this is a huge escalation by Hamas
那这是哈马斯提升战事的一个高度，
to hit these very large and very populated cities.
来攻击这些非常大而且多人口居住的地方。
The unfortunate reality is Israel lives with rockets from Hamas for all the time.
很不幸的是，以色列一直在哈马斯的火箭的威胁之下。
So this is showing you the number of rockets shot by Hamas into Israel since 2001.
这张图表告诉我们，自从2001年哈马斯向以色列发射的火箭炮，
So there have been 4 military operations by Israel since 2001.
从2001年开始，以色列的反击军事行动有4次。
In 2008,
在2008
2012,
年、2012年、
2014,
2014年，
and today in 2021.
还有今天2021年。
So now you have this year we have 4,000 rockets so far have been shot.
那今年已经有超过4000个火箭炮射到以色列，
And this will exceed the largest amount of rockets Israel's received that was in 2014.
这已经超过了2014年以色列所接受火箭炮的数目。
In 2014, this was over a 1-month period, these 4,200 rockets.
2014年在1个月之内，他们接收到了4225个火箭炮。
And now here in 2021, we've received 4,000 rockets in 1 week.
但是在今年1个礼拜之内，以色列就收到了4000多个火箭炮的攻击。
So it's very concerning that these military operations that Israel has taken to stop Hamas from weaponizing hasn't worked.
但是让人很关切的就是，以色列对他们这个火箭炮攻击的反制行动呢，还没有成功。
So that's why Israel is not taking a ceasefire now.
所以以色列现在没有接受这个停火的协议。
They say the operation is not complete.
他们说这个军事行动还不完全。
And they are destroying military targets inside Gaza at a rapid pace.
他们以很快的速度摧毁在加沙的一些军事基地。
So on the one hand, you have Hamas and Gaza shooting rockets into civilian populated areas of Israel.
一方面，从加沙哈马斯射了火箭进入以色列人口多的有人居住的地方，
to cause terror and destruction of any Israeli, no matter Arab, no matter Jew.
对以色列居住的人，不管是阿拉伯人或是犹太人，都造成了恐慌和害怕。
And you have Israel doing surgical strikes, surgical military strikes onto military infrastructure inside Gaza.
那另一方面，我们看到以色列也向加沙地区的哈马斯的这个军事基地发出攻击，
ensuring a minimal loss of life.
他们要确保最低伤亡的人数。
You have to understand that inside Gaza live 2 million people.
我们必须明白，在加沙住了200万人
2 million Palestinians.
，200万巴勒斯坦人。
They say Gaza is the most densely populated country in the world.
他们说加沙是全世界人口密度最高的地区。
So you have Israel who warns before they strike a target, they send text messages to phones.
我们晓得以色列在发出攻击之前，他们会提出警告，他们用手机送出了很多的短信。
They drop a non-exploding, they call it a knock on the roof on the top of the building before it comes down.
他们也投放一些东西到屋顶上，警告人我们要来攻击了。
Giving people inside the building a warning that in a few minutes a bomb is going to drop and the building will be destroyed.
警告他们在几分钟之内，这个炸弹就要炸到这个建筑了，你们赶快逃命吧。
And so, so far in Gaza, there have been a number of casualties. Most of them are terrorists. Most of them are Hamas military.
所以目前在加沙有受伤的人员，多半是哈马斯的军事人员。
And it's, of course, it's a war and there are casualties of war, but Israel does all it can to reduce civilian deaths.
当然，这是一个战争，一定会有人伤亡，但是以色列尽其可能减少伤亡的人数。
Because if Israel were just shooting aimlessly throughout Gaza, we wouldn't see 100, 200 people dead inside Gaza. We would see tens of thousands of people dead because of the dense population.
假如以色列漫无目标的朝加沙发射火弹的话，那伤亡人数就不止目前这些100多人了，而会是成千上万的人，因为那个地方人口密度非常高。
But we know the God of Israel neither slumbers or sleeps. Amen.
我们知道以色列的上帝不打盹也不睡觉。
And had it not been for the invention of the Iron Dome, there would be so many more deaths inside Israel.
假如以色列没有发明这个铁穹，那么在以色列境内也会有很多人伤亡。
Truly, it is a miracle invention.
这个铁穹确实是一个非常奇迹式的发明。
And you can see here, like, so this is the ambulance service of Israel.
这是以色列的救护车服务的一些标志。
And so you have 10 people inside Israel who have been killed by the 4,000 rockets Hamas has shot.
在以色列境内有10个人死于哈马斯发射的火箭弹。
10 people. More people were injured running to the shelters than were hit, injured by rockets.
好，只有10个人死亡，因为很多人都早进去逃进这个防空的设施里面去了。
So this is what the leftist media loves to pick up. Look at the disproportionate numbers of deaths inside Gaza compared to inside Israel.
这也是左媒特意鼓吹的。他说：“你们看看以色列死多少人，加沙那边哈马斯死多少人。”
Now, we're also having a lot of riots and lynchings throughout the cities of Israel.
那在以色列各个城市，我们也看到很多的暴动，还有就是故意伤害别人。
So these are Arab and Jewish extremists who are fighting each other in the streets of Israel.
这些是阿拉伯跟犹太的极端分子，他们在以色列的街道彼此互相攻击。
And this level of rioting hasn't been seen in Israel before.
这个暴动的程度在以色列以前也没有见过。
There have been isolated cases here and there, but not widespread, orchestrated rioting.
曾经有突发性的1个或2个不相关的事件，但是我们从来没有看过这个大面积的暴动。
So in many of the Arab Israeli places where Arabs and Jews live in close proximity to each other, this violence is erupting.
所以在以色列，阿拉伯人跟犹太人都有住的这些地区、这些城市呢，这些暴动都在
And this
发
is
生。
being all orchestrated and called for by the Palestinian Authority. They want rioting, they want looting, they want lynching and burning of cars.
这是巴勒斯坦政府所乐意看到的，他们希望看到以色列境内阿拉伯人跟以色列人发生激烈的冲突。
They are doing all they can to cause chaos and terror on the streets of Israel.
他们尽其可能的在以色列的街市上看到这些暴动的发生。
But these are a very few Arab Israelis who are taking part in these demonstrations. It's not a big number.
但是就是 you say there are very few demonstrations or there's a lot?
The extremists are few in number compared to those who
Okay.
want to live in peace.
OK， 就这些极端分子跟这些和平的人比较起来呢，他们的数目是相当小的。
And most Arab Israelis, there's 2 million Arab Israelis and there's 7 million Jews living together in Israel, coexisting.
在以色列有200万的阿拉伯人以及700万的犹太人和平的生活在以色列。
And you walk out on the street and you meet an Arab. He doesn't want to go live in a Palestinian state. He wants to live in Israel, where he has rights, where he has sanitation, where he has job opportunities.
阿拉伯人不愿意离开他所居住的以色列，到其他这个巴勒斯坦国家去居住，因为他在耶路撒冷，在以色列他有自由，他有健康，他有工作的机会。
So the struggle and the jihad is being fueled and flamed by Hamas, by the Palestinian Authority, those Palestinian leaders sitting in their nice houses, ordering these young, influential kids to fight against the evil Israel, they call it.
所以在以色列的这些圣战还有暴动呢，基本上是巴勒斯坦跟哈马斯他们所激发出来的。他们要这些年轻的不懂事的人去在以色列里制造这些暴乱。
The ones who are perpetrating the lynching and the fire bombs and the burning of synagogues are 13, 14, 17-year-old kids, boys.
那些引发爆炸、在攻击车辆的这些人呢，多半是13、15岁、17岁的年轻人。
And the blame lies squarely with the Palestinian Authority, who indoctrinates them and teaches them in school that Israel is the devil and the demon that needs to be, and Jews need to be wiped off the face of the earth.
他们在学校受到一个洗脑的教育，就是以色列是这个邪恶的，他们必须从地球上给完全消灭掉。
So it's a systemic problem that is not easily addressed.
这是一个系统性的问题，所以不太容易去解决。
And unfortunately, the funding from the United Nations and now from President Biden in America is funding these the schools and the textbooks and the indoctrination of these young influential Palestinians living in the West Bank of Israel.
但是很可惜的就是，现在拜登政府以及联合国资助那样的教科书，在这个以色列的West Bank 在西岸地区，好，就是教导这些孩子这些仇恨的教育。
So what everybody needs to remember is when you hear Hamas, you need to think Iran. This is who's really fueling. It's a proxy war with Iran when Israel fights with Hamas.
所以你要一旦听到哈马斯这个名称呢，你就要知道是伊朗在资助哈马斯来跟以色列作战。
And we have Hamas in Lebanon with we have Iran in Lebanon with Hezbollah, and we have them in Syria as well.
那在伊朗、在叙利亚，还有在you say Iran, Syria, and
we have Lebanon, Syria, where Iran proxies are operating.
就是伊朗这个受伊朗支持的人在激发这些暴动、这些仇恨。他们在这个哈马斯在叙利亚有，在伊朗有，另外还有一个国家也有。
黎巴嫩。
And so Iran is Persia in the Bible.
那伊朗在圣经里面是波斯。
And Persia is a key player in the Gog-Magog war.
那波斯在哥格跟马格的战争中呢，它有一个关键的角色。
And so as Israel is struggling with these enemies on its borders,
所以当以色列跟他邻近的这些国家、这些敌人在那边挣扎的时候，
it's really dealing with the Antichrist spirit and the beginnings of war with Persia and the Gog-Magog war.
事实上，它是在与这个敌基督作战，而且是在与这个哥格、马格还有波斯他们的运作在作战。
And so we all know that Lebanon and Hezbollah is watching this war with Hamas and how Israel is responding.
我们知道，在黎巴嫩的真主党也在观察这个哈马斯跟以色列的战争。
All of its enemies are seeing what Israel is doing in this war.
所有的敌人都在观察以色列在这个战争中会怎么做。
And so everyone says that that if Hamas lays down its rockets and its weapons, then there'll be peace. But if Israel lays down its weapons, then there'll only be the destruction of Israel and the Jewish people.
很多人说，当哈马斯或以色列的邻近的国家把武器放下的话呢，就会有和平。但是，假如以色列把武器放下的话呢，以色列就完蛋了。
And so this is the struggle. There is no clear path to peace in any way.
这就是很大的一个挣扎哈，因为达到和平之路确实看不出是哪一条。
But we can feel the movement towards peace and towards someone or something bringing peace across the region, because that's what the Bible says one day is going to happen.
但是我们好像正朝向和平，还是朝向和平走上去，因为圣经说将来会有一个和平的协议在这个地区发生。
And there is a desire for peace in the hearts of Arab and what were once our enemies, signing these peace accords with Israel.
那在阿拉伯国家当中呢，也很渴望平安，就是有些国家已经跟以色列签立了这个和平的协议。
So you can see the writing on the wall that one day someone will come with a false peace and it will be accepted by all the parties.
所以你可以看到，有一天有一个人会提议一个假和平协议，所有的这个关键的方面呢都会接受。
Because Israel wants it and its enemies want it. It's the one thing they want.
因为以色列以及他们的敌人都希望有和平。
They don't agree on the path to get there, but they want peace somehow, some way.
虽然他们不同意怎么达到这个和平，但是不管怎么样，他们还是盼望着和平。
So you can feel the kingdom of God being manifest on the earth here in Israel. People are crying out for the Messiah.
你可以看到以色列现在这个上帝的国度呢正在降临，因为人心里呼喊着弥赛亚快点来。
And so this is what we are seeing. I'm here in Jerusalem. From my window, I can see the southern wall of the old city.
那这就是我心里的感受。从我住的地方，我可以看到我住的这个城市南边的墙。
And I can say that in Jerusalem, it's been rather peaceful during this past week.
我可以说，在过去这个礼拜，以色列还是相当平安。
And I live in a neighborhood that's 13,000 Arabs and 2,000 Jews and internationals.
我住的地区有13000个阿拉伯人，还有2000个犹太人，还有一些国际人士。
And there's been a few car fires, but for the most part, it's been very quiet in our neighborhood.
在我这个社区只有几个车子着火，但是其他方面都相当的平安安静。
And during all of this that's going on, most of Israel is moving at a normal pace. Children are going to school, people are going to work.
那这一些事情发生之间呢，以色列还是正常的生活，小孩子还是上学，上班的还是上班。
So it's not pandemonium everywhere like whatever you see on the news.
所以
Life
不
is
像
fairly normal.
不像新闻报告里面看到，好像以色列乱糟糟的啊，其实生活还是蛮普通平常。
And I'll say this, that we at the Jewish Agency are doing all we can to protect the beneficiaries that are living inside of our absorption centers and in our programs.
我们的机构现在也是全力照顾住在我们这个房舍的迎接回到以色列的这些人。
You have to imagine, what if just 1 week before these rockets went off, you made Aliyah from Peru and you land in Israel to sunny skies and nice weather.
你可以想象，1个礼拜之前，你从秘鲁移居回到以色列，这个天气很好，然后这个晴空万里，你根本没想到说会有这样的问题。
And then you hear sirens and you hear rocket booms.
然后你听到这个警号声，然后你听到这个火箭爆炸的声音，然后你就奔跑到这个防空弹里去。
And so a lot of people are traumatized by the ongoing barrage of rockets.
所以很多人也受到这个不停的这个火箭炮攻击的这些惊骇。
Israel, no nation should live with an enemy shooting rockets into them.
好，我觉得世界上没有任何一个国家可以接受说他的邻居一直朝他打这个火箭。
And so Israel must respond and must defend its civilian populations.
所以以色列一定要回应，而且要保护他自己的这个市民。
Now, what we're doing currently is we are evacuating some of the residents in our centers to places where it's more quiet in the north.
我们的施工中心现在正在撤离一些住在比较有危险的地区的一些人，好，把他们安排到比较安全的地区。
Because some of the people are traumatized very psychologically. They need counseling, they need trauma counseling and debriefing, and they need to escape this situation because they're not sleeping and they're not doing well physically.
有些人受到惊吓，所以他们需要特别的辅导，然后这种创伤的一些心理建设。有些人也睡不着。
So we're providing counselors and we're providing housing and transportation and evacuation out of these areas that are getting hardest hit by the rockets.
所以我们现在撤离最被攻打的这些地方放射中的人，也提供他们心理的辅导，他们的交通，还有他们新的住处。
And so you are able to help us in this current emergency situation. Isaiah 19 Ministries is helping us, and you can send donations there, and it will go to help give a little bit of respite and quiet to families that have really been traumatized by the current fighting that's going on in the south of Israel.
你可以帮助我们这个情况，就是支持以赛亚19事工，因为以赛亚19事工会奉献给我们，来帮助我们所照顾的这些人。
Yes. Well, thank you, Justin, for what he has spoken so far. I'm sure that you will have more to say, but I was wondering, do we have any questions for Justin? But I'm sure we probably have a lot of questions.
谢谢 Justin 刚刚的报告分享哈。那现在大家如果有什么问题想问他的话，可以提出来。
Yes.
Toda, Toda, Justin, Toda, and we pray for a peaceful Shavuot. So shalom. There, one can only speculate that this constant barrage of missiles, what is in their minds? They know Israel is going to retaliate. Any sense, any thoughts on that?
他的问题就是说，这么一大群的火箭攻击，好，那这些人到底是怎么想的？当然，以色列会回击。
And by the way, can we mute Mina? Can you make me a co-host so we can mute these folks?
Okay. Where are you?
By the way, I get the missile alerts. So every time there's a missile alert, I get the alert.
Yes.
我也收到火箭炮的警讯，每次火箭发射的时候呢，我就知道了。
So I mean, Hamas just wants to cause as much terror and disruption of life as they possibly can, and as much casualties and destruction as they can.
哈马斯尽其所能的制造恐怖、制造惊吓，而且制造创伤、伤亡人数。
Because they know Israel will retaliate.
因为他们知道以色列会反击。
And eventually give in to their demands.
而且最后呢，会接受他们的要求。
Israel supplies them with water, with a good half of their electricity.
以色列提供他们的水源以及他们一半的电力。
They're supposed to be building schools and housing with the concrete that's allowed to pass into Gaza.
他们也用可以运输到加沙的水泥建造学校，建造一些建筑物。
But they've used the concrete to build these elaborate tunnel networks under Gaza.
但是在加沙，他们用这些水泥建造很多的地道。
They're using this German-made tunnel building machine that does it automatically.
他们使用德国制造的做这个地下道的这些机器。
It digs out the concrete. It digs out the dirt, and it applies concrete all in one system.
他们把这个水泥还有这个泥土，把它挖出来，就是一个系列的，就可以挖出这个地道。
And they say that these tunnels may have cost $300 million to build.
他说这些地道要花到这个200 million，
yes，
要2亿到3亿元去盖一个地道。
And some of them we destroyed about a year ago were big enough to drive vehicles through.
1年前他们发现这些地道呢，一个车都可以开过去。
They began in Gaza and they came out inside underneath Israel populated areas.
他们是从加沙开始，然后一直通到以色列人口
And so
多的地方。
Hamas knows eventually there'll be a brokered ceasefire, and Israel will reluctantly give in to their demands.
他们知道最后以色列会跟他们和平解决，然后以色列会很不情愿的接受他们的要求。
And allow humanitarian aid to flow in, and additional fuel, and eventually concrete for building what should be good things but are destructive things.
然后他们说以色列会给他们更多的人。世界会给他们更多的人道援助，然后燃料会进去，然后本来这些可以做好事情的水泥，现在被用来做一些毁灭的东西。
Eventually, the international pressure will grow so much that Israel has to stop.
他们说，最终这个国际的压力会那么大，以色列一定会停止。
But
they are actively assassinating Hamas military officers.
但
during
是
this
以色列非
operation.
常积极的暗杀哈马斯的领导人物。
And these a major tunnel network under northern Gaza called the Metro was destroyed or is being
那这些
destroyed.
大量的这个地道在加沙建的呢，也被以色列摧毁了。
One night a couple of weeks ago, 150 planes bombed the Metro, bombed this tunnel network inside Gaza.
这些这个地道的这个网络呢，在大概被以色列炸毁了。
And so it's very political. Hamas wants to exert maximum force and show its strength so that one day they can be the ruling party throughout all the Palestinian world.
那哈马斯正施加压力，希望他自己以后成为巴勒斯坦国家里面，他是一个最强有力的一个统治的阶级。
And Hamas is a very oppressive form of Islamic it's a very oppressive regime that calls for a very devout and orthodox form of Islam.
哈马斯是伊斯兰教里面最严谨而且最严厉的一个群体，他们要求人对他们绝对的敬重，而且非常
If a woman wears the wrong kind of clothing and somebody thinks it's inappropriate, she can have acid thrown on her in the street.
假如一个伊斯兰妇女穿的衣着不合，他们觉得不对，人家可以就对他们泼硫酸。
So this is not a normal form of Islam that anybody wants to live with.
所以这哈马斯不是任何伊斯兰教的人乐意让他们来统治、让他们管理的。
Yeah, Jared, you got the question?
Yes, Justin, how did Hamas took over Gaza Strip?
他的问题是哈马斯怎么掠夺了这个加沙走廊这一带？
Hamas took over when Israel withdrew. I think it was 8,000 Jewish people were living in Gaza. This is 2004. When is this? What year is this? 2004?
What?
2014?
Much earlier than
No.
2000.
When did
对不起哈，那个 Mina 跟艾琳，我有宣教士来到我家，我必须去跟他们打声招呼。你们可不可以 take over the translation?
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead. You're saying something.
2005.
yeah,
2005. Okay.
yeah, right after the 2004 war, the first war, Israel made a decision along with the United States to withdraw, to evacuate the Jews living in Gaza in order to establish this. It was part of a peace agreement, in hopes that the Palestinians would have their own little place there and be able to form a government and move forward with their lives.
But do you believe it to be a good policy today? And is Israel going to continue this policy?
No, it was a huge mistake. It was a huge mistake looking back. And so in this vacuum of no government, Hamas moved in and made itself the de facto government. So it was a terrible decision. It didn't work. It was a failed experiment. And now I don't know that you can uproot Hamas from Gaza. I don't know how you, unless you do a full ground invasion, which would be a huge loss of life on both sides and probably prisoners of war. It would be a very huge blow to Israel if we were to do a ground invasion and really root out all of Hamas. I don't think that the world has the stomach to stand a war like that. So I don't see Israel doing that at this point.
Elaine, 你要翻译吗？Eileen.
No, 你翻，因为我以为你要翻，我没有注意。你刚刚问他什么问题，我也不。
我说 ，OK， 那个，所以现在以色列很难决定说他们到底是要做什么，因为他们当初对哈马斯的这个的那种挑战，他们现在是没有办法做出来这样子的决定，到底是要真的 冲过去把他们杀掉呢，还是说要做这个和平的谈判？那我刚是问他说，那你的决定到底是什么？那他说他们现在还没有办法来做这个决定。Yeah.
So Israel is very thankful that the United States is still supporting its current operation inside of Gaza. Biden is still supporting Israel's right to defend itself. And they the U.S. just approved a $738 million defense spending plan with Israel. So that's all very positive because, you know, the situation, everyone's wondering how much is America really going to stand with Israel under this new administration. But Biden and Blinken are currently supporting Israel publicly. So this is good.
到目前为止呢，我们很感谢美国呢，一直在支持以色列前任的这个领导跟这一次的这一任的总统呢，都继续的支持我们以色列这样的一个在背后支持我们，甚至拿了$7 million来帮助以色列来做这个防御设备。所以我们很感谢美国，到目前为止，拜登政府还是支持以色列的。
So in case you don't know, the United Nations Security Council has met. They've met 3 times.
对，去年的把那个苏拉马尼我就。
The United Nations Security Council has met 3 times in this past week, trying to draft a resolution condemning Israel's attack on Hamas inside Gaza. And 14 out of the 15 member states have wanted to pass this resolution. It's only the United States that's withholding is keeping this resolution from being passed, and it must be passed by 100% of the voters.
在联合国呢，在他们开了3次会，那看起来好像只有美国目前还是很支持以色列这个国家的这个做一个防御的这样的，他们可以自己，因为这个别的就等于是邻国来攻打他们的时候，他们是可以自己做防御的。那看起来美国是比较。跟这个联合国来比的话，美国还是非常支持以色列自己来保护、防御自己，他们并没有做任何的制裁，到目前为止。
And this draft resolution is condemning Israel for its attack on Hamas and on the Gazans. It doesn't even mention that Hamas has sent 3,000, 4,000, now 4,000 rockets into Israel. It's just saying that it's all Israel's fault, everything that's happening, like it's a terrible resolution, which is normal with the Security Council.
因为所有外界呢都一直在怪罪以色列，这个攻打这个哈马斯这个哈马斯这个政权，然后他们并没有报道说哈马斯用了4000多枚，在1个礼拜之内发射了4000多枚的火箭来攻打以色列这个国家，所以呢，他现在个人的认为说，至少美国并没有在中间来阻止或是讲，就是让他们不可以，或是说假的报道，让他们不可以说来做自我防御。
Okay, Mina, I think that's about all I have. In case you have anything else, I see Mark Gonzalez has joined us.
Yes. Hey, Mark Gonzalez. Where are you, Mark? Mark Gonzalez, can you show up?
Yes, can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, I can. You're right next to Justin, you know. You got any questions for Justin, Mark?
No, and just a point of clarification. Justin, something I've been telling this group is we're praying that America's response, and I share this with everyone. Remember last week when we talked about this, we talked about praying that America would respond correctly, because every time America has gotten in the way of advancing Israel and the Jewish people, there's always been judgment in America. So it's been great to see what's going on and the 738 million and so forth that's happening. And that, of course, we have said that we as a country believe that Israel has a right to defend itself, and then it's been backed up with some dollars. So we pray that we keep that posture going forward, because this could be a little longer than expected, than we all want to see. And we know the role that the squad, AOC, Presley, Tlaib, and Omar hold on the Democratic Party, and they are pushing this anti-Semitism. And so with that said, the Democratic Party has a tendency to eventually cave in to their demands. So we need to continue to pray that
Amen.
we do not get in the way of Israel, the Jewish people, because judgment would then come on America.
就像上个礼拜我跟你们分享一样，请你们为美国的这个正确的来帮助以色列的这样的一个选择的正确。那我们很感谢美国确实给了7亿的美金来帮助以色列。那我们还是要继续祷告，因为帮助以色列的神就帮助我们。如果是反对以色列的，我们就要受到咒诅。所以呢，我们很感谢这次美国还是选择了对的方向。那我们还是要继续的祷告，因为非常左派的那一些 AOC 啦，那个欧玛啦，这一类的，就是一个像那个极端分子，他们现在还一直在推动来反对以色列，来自己保护自己这么像一个的决议。所以我们必须还要站立在这个破口上，为我们这个国家跟以色列联合，甚至在这个当我们要选择帮助他们的时候，是要选择对的方向，这个方向继续祷告。
So God is answering our prayers. We got to keep praying, keep pressing in for, not in this case, we definitely cover the America piece because we can't get in the way. But at the same time, we pray for the peace of Jerusalem, of Israel, the Jewish people, and the innocent folks that are being caught in the middle of this in the Hamas, in the Gaza Strip, because of what Hamas does to the people. And so thank you for that update, Justin. Some good information there. That tunnel thing is pretty amazing. That most people do not know about. They think they take, and they do take a while, but not as long as people could imagine that technology exists the way that it exists to create these tunnels.
That's right.
谢谢Justin 今天晚上给我们的这个更进一步的这些消息。那我们还是要继续的祷告，因为这个战争可能不是这么短暂就结束的。那我们还是要继续为这些在加萨走廊那些无辜的人民来祷告，因为他们是无辜的。那战争也是很无情的，所以我们要为这些人民，以色列加萨走廊，甚至就是伊朗那边无辜的人民来祷告，祈求平安。
Yeah. So what is Israel going to do now from now on?
Mina 问说，以色列现在要如何进行，再继续走下去？
Israel will continue to defend its land and its people from any attacks, domestic or foreign. I just want to say this before I go, that today the Palestinian Authority has announced that Tuesday here in Israel, which is today, will be a day of rage. So it's being spread throughout social media, inciting the rage, showing videos. So we can expect Molotov cocktails, rock throwing, car ramming, and even worse on this day. So pray for Israel especially today as we begin the work week after Shavuot, and people are riding on the bus, and so these the Palestinian Authority is really inciting and encouraging violence throughout all of Israel, north to south. Anywhere you can cause terror and confusion and loss of life and property, like this is what they want to happen.
Mina 刚刚问说，那以色列怎么办？那以色列继续的来做抵御啦，也只能这样子了。那今天是他们第一天上班，就他们的这个很大的Shavuot这个结束了，所以他们继续的所有的外面都是正常，继续上班，车子也继续的，公车也继续的在行驶。那我们还是继续的为他们的平安祷告。
Yes.
以色列的平安祷告。Okay.
Well, thank you so much. Does anyone have any questions before Justin says goodbye? Okay, yeah.
One question.
Yes.
Brother Boland, we thank you for what you're doing over there and for the Jewish Agency. And I know Isaiah 19 Ministries is very proud and happy to be able to do our little part in supporting the Aliyah. And so we bless you. My question is this, before the war or before the violence started, we heard a lot about the COVID lockdown and the passport that was very severe in Israel. And since the violence started, we haven't heard much more about that. Is it still in effect? Do they enforce social distancing in the fallout shelters or whatever they're hiding in?
Thanks, Lockley. This is the best thing about this war is nobody's talking about coronavirus anymore. So you can walk down the street, you can go into stores, and nobody's like, put on your mask. You need to wear your mask. Nobody cares anymore. But yes, Israel has led the world in coronavirus lockdowns and encouragement and manipulation of getting this experimental vaccine. So that's quieted down. Of course, it's not in the news at all. But while this war was going on, then this past week, the FDA approved for emergency use authorization the Pfizer vaccine for 12 to 15-year-olds. And so this will be starting probably as soon as they can begin it here in Israel. Before this war, Bibi was saying that he wants all of the 12-year-old and above vaccinated before the end of the school year, which is about 5 weeks away. So it's very disconcerting, and the level of control and influence that the Israeli government has had on its people. I think we've spent the most days in lockdown of anyone. Has been terrible to see happen over this past year. But it was ending. They were opening up things. Things are opened up. You can now, even without the vaccine, you can go to museums and you can go to cultural events. You can go to swimming pools. Like, they've released that, but there's talk of, like, we're just waiting for them to play. Like, what kind of trick are they going to play to get parents to vaccinate their children? So they're saying, like, maybe they'll take away the parent's green passport if they don't get their kid vaccinated. So sorry, you can't do any of those fun things that you were doing, and you can't leave the country if you don't get your children vaccinated. So yeah, these are the kind of tools. It's not mandatory, but it's coerced and manipulated so that you feel like you have to get the vaccine, whether you like it or not.
OK， 刚刚那个 Luckily 问他，就是先谢谢他给我们的这个消息，然后又问他在这个就是这个当这个有这个战争之前呢，以色列有很多的关于就是要戴口罩啦，要打疫苗啦，还有这个疫苗的护照啦之类的事情，是现在的情况如何？他说现在没有人在谈这些